Hello, and welcome to the Vicar's Watch Dibley,
the podcast where three priests link our stories with those of a Reverend Geraldine Granger and other TV vicars. I'm Kate.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Ruthie. This episode, we are talking about Celebrity Vicar, and we're discussing Geraldine's dalliance with fame and how she does with it, and how we would deal with it if it came our way too.
Everybody.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Dundee.
Dundee.
Dundee. I'm feeling Dundee, yeah. Feeling perky with the sunshine.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely weather, and we hope that all our listeners are enjoying wherever you are as well. What have we been loving this week, Ruthie?
Well, I've had a bit of a difficult week, so it's trying to think of something that I've been loving, and I've been loving the crutch that has been terrible Netflix films. You know, the rom-coms where you can just guess everything. If you were like to create a bingo board of stereotypical things that happen in a rom-com, I've been watching all the ones that were like check every single box.
Oh yes.
So that's been great, watching terrible rom-coms. What about you, Jenny?
For me, I have been loving flowers. My bestie sent me a mega bouquet of flowers totally out the blue yesterday.
Oh,
and oh my gosh,
beautiful.
I can't even express to you how amazing they smell. So this week I've been loving flowers. And in fact, usually I go to Starbucks to do my, or of course other coffee shops are available, to do my emails and admin work. Just helps me to focus sometimes, gets me out of the house. But I couldn't even bear to leave the flowers yesterday. I had to work in the study all day long. So loving the flowers. So beautiful.
Not sponsored either by Starbucks or by flowers.
Amen.
How about you, Kate?
So I needed to find just a TV show to have on that isn't gonna take up too much brain space. So I was flicking through Disney Plus, and I came across there's two TV shows kind of related called 911. There's one which is set in Texas and one which is set in LA, and they're about fire and rescue teams. And I thought this was just going to be like brainless TV, but my goodness, if it isn't actually really good and really compelling. It's a little bit like over dramatized and a bit, I don't know, like some of the disasters they deal with, you think, okay, yeah, sure, okay. You know, there's one where there's like a volcanic eruption in Texas.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, it's really good. It's particularly good because they have characters with really strong faith in them. So there's lots and lots of conversation about God and prayer and faith and how God relates to disaster and trauma and pain. And it's really... Yeah, I really enjoy it.
Can I ask, is it fictional characters or is it real time following them in their day?
It's fictional.
Oh, okay.
It's fictional. Like I said, it's very dramatised. Like, it's very... I can't think of another word other than camp. It's not camp, but you know what I mean? Like, it's really overblown. Like, how can we amp up the drama and make this like it's not just that the firefighter who's just moved to Texas to take over a firehouse where the whole team has died in a disaster and he needs to start it up. Not only does he need to do that, but he's also just been diagnosed with cancer. And
is that seriously a plot line?
That's the opening plot line.
Oh my gosh,
that's intense.
And he's brought his son with him. His son, who's come with him from New York, because not only that, he was a firefighter in New York, and he lost his whole team in the Two Towers attacks.
That's so sad.
Flipping it.
But anyway, he's brought his son along, and he's brought his son along because his son has just had an overdose and tried to commit suicide. So he's brought him along with him. And, oh my goodness, it's
heavy, man. Sounds heavy.
But it's just really good.
Glad you're enjoying it.
For those listening, while Kate was discussing that, her arms were all over the place. She was so animated. So clearly this comes with the Rev Kate Thompson endorsement, seal of approval. Yeah. That's really cool. So this week we are talking about episode 3 of season 2.
Yeah.
It's called Celebrity Vicar, and it is. It was an episode that we were talking about just before while we were planning what we were going to say, and me and Kate both said there's not much in this, and then we've got quite a lot of things to talk about. So it turns out there's more in there than we thought, and as per usual, the book is out. I've got the script, and we start in the parish council.
Or
so
do
it would
we?
seem, or do we? And David is talking about the parish council and saying, let's crack on with things and stop messing about. And then it becomes obvious that this is a dream and everyone behaving themselves would only happen in one of David's dreams.
Oh. Hugo's excited to go to the council meeting though.
Yeah, so it's the best
that
part
is
of
when
this
he wakes
week.
up.
Which is, as David points out, that is really quite sad.
It is quite sad, in a way.
So I had the question for you two. Do you guys dream about work like David is here?
Yeah. And I have really realistic dreams, so that can get
Yeah,
really
me too.
confusing.
I don't think I ever have, you know.
Have you
I
not?
don't think so.
Oh, you sweet summer child.
Yeah. I
don't
also
feel that, I
have
think.
very vivid dreams, which I think is partly because of the medication that I'm on. And so sometimes when I wake up, I just need to double check that what I've dreamed, whether that's happened or not, and whether that's to do with work or other things. And so we'll just clarify with my spouse, did we discuss this, or have I got a meeting today? Because it's so realistic, for good or for ill.
Yeah, and for me, because my chronic pain and I can get brain fog, like with fatigue as well, it can actually become really, really problematic. Because like someone will be like, "Why didn't you tell me about this?" And I was like, "I did tell you about this. I did tell you about this, didn't I?" Because I'll have dreamed that I'd sent an email and I didn't send the email. It's a very boring dream.
Wow. I do,
And that's a bad excuse, isn't it? You can't really say, I did email
dream
you,
that.
but just in my dream.
Yeah.
Wow. I'd feel like I was working in my rest time if I dreamt about work. Or like meetings and stuff.
Yeah.
I'd be like, brain, you need to think about bananas and strawberries and sunshine.
So the worst thing about those really vivid work dreams, though, is when it's a dream and it's been a really anxious situation in the dream, or you've had an argument with someone and then you wake up and that energy carries on.
Oh,
That's-
yeah. I've had that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's horrible.
really awful. Especially when it's someone you work really closely with as well. And you just wake up and you're like, I hate you. I hate you for that thing you did in my dream.
Yeah, that is
Just
tough.
get mad at them. So David is awake now and going to the actual parish council, which Hugo suggests they meet weekly.
Yeah, I mean, of all the terrifying things in this scene, that is the scariest. Because I know I'm a massive like PCC meeting advocate. I'm like, woo, let's get people together. But every single week.
And you know what it means for Geraldine, right? That because this isn't the parochial church council, there are also weeks where she has both this and the parochial church council, and potentially board of governors for a school if she's on board of governors.
That's
for
a lot
school.
of meetings. A lot of big meetings.
I wonder though first question is there enough going on in the village to warrant a weekly meeting like this, or is it David on a power trip? The second question I have with this is actually then, is it quite a good meeting point for Geraldine to get the feel of what's going on in the village? And so she kind of sees it more as a what's going on, what do I need to know about, that kind of meeting, which actually I think would be quite helpful.
Well, I think that you're probably right, because judging by what happens in this meeting, they are extraordinarily busy because they're trying to book in this Valentine's gala dinner and decide, which is supposed to be in February, around the 14th, and decide, they've got such a busy schedule in their community and parish life. They can't book it until November. So I think you might be right. I think they're super oversubscribed.
Or is the busyness actually, I think some of it is personal stuff like Jim saying, "Oh, I can't do that date."
Yeah.
I think that the reason this group meets so much is actually there's a social element for it.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of a clique, David Horton aside, and we can see that energy of how they riff off of each other. And they play with David, and clearly they've got a deal on with the pub because the pub seems to have brought them food.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
I think, what's really interesting, and further evidence that there is a separate PCC meeting with the fact that they've made decisions about the old folks Valentine's dinner, which has been planned, and it's not been planned by this group, so therefore it's been planned by a different body
Elsewhere. In the beginning of the meeting, it happens as David was dreaming it. Geraldine turns up late because Geraldine always turns up late. And then she's like, I think we need no distractions. We need to just crack on. And their business of the day involves trying to get a date for this meeting. And I have a confession to you all. Ooh. I am the Jim Trotts, the Franks, the Owens in all of this. I distract meetings all of the time. And I'm one of those people who need to have fun every so often in stuff. Otherwise, I just lose all concentration and just get bored. And so I'm the one who will add in a little comment about something or a little joke or make an observation. And I know I do it. And I imagine it is irritating at times, but I can't concentrate if I don't have fun.
Oh, that's sweet.
I need fun. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I am Frank. Am I sorry I'm Frank?
I remember, didn't at college, Vicar school, they, like at training college, I'm sure for some of the lectures, they put like a bowl in the centre of the table with like little springs and clips and sweets for us to eat and things for us to play with, just in case we were one of those people that were better when we were physically engaged as well, like kinesthetic learning or having.
Yeah, I think we made dragons out of pipe cleaners in that meeting.
Possibly. We were thinking of different learning styles, but I don't know. I think I'm a bit the opposite way. I'm like, right, we're here for a reason. Douche, 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 douche. The thing that I cannot stand, I don't mind a joke or a quip or a funny comment or even playing with a spring or something. What I just cannot bear is a very long-winded story that has a point at the very end of it, but takes at least 7.5 minutes to get there. And that I'm sat there going, and I can feel myself getting like tense and a bit fidgety. And I'm like, no, Jenny, this is a beloved child of God. Just listen. You're going to be okay. You can get through this. But when you've done many of those in one meeting or many of those in a day, I start to notice like physical symptoms of frustration. And then I'm like, oh no. But yeah, that's the thing in meeting that grinds my gears, because I'm like, right, let's go, douche, douche, douche. Although, to be fair, I probably talk the most out of everybody in a meeting, which I also apologise for. That's definitely my meeting fault.
Yeah, I'm probably a bit like you, Jenny. But for me, the thing I get not annoyed at, but kind of I think, oh, here we go, is when you shoot off from the agenda, and it is a really valid thing to be talking about, like an idea or something that's important and needs to be discussed, but which wasn't on the agenda, and therefore like you have to sort of say, like, this is really important. Can we either form a little group of 2 people who you'll go off, talk about this and then report back at the next meeting, or can we move this to the next meeting because we've got so much else on the agenda and we'd all quite like to finish by 9:30 or whatever.
A reasonable time.
And it's you just know when one of those things is about to happen, and you can just see the people gearing up, and you're like, oh no, we opened a can of worms.
So in conclusion here, Kate and Jenny would hate for me to be on their PCCs.
I don't agree with that statement at all. You pioneer a beautiful face.
They might have a quiet word with me after the end of a meeting to just
take you aside.
Ruthie, you've got some really great ideas. Do you think maybe before the next meeting you could like write them down and we could work out which ones we discuss, and here's some blue tack for you to play with. I realise we're recording this and I'm playing with a piece of paper at the same time.
Keep that fiddling.
You see, Ruthie, I think maybe I'm a bit like you in the same way, though, in that, but my way of dealing with being bored in meetings is I just want to get the meeting over and done with as soon as possible. Because I do zone out, but my thinking is if I can just get through everything quickly, Then
we're done.
Then I can go home and watch TV.
Watch your 911 episodes.
Watch 911.
It is funny though, because for all of their chattering away and all of their quips and all of the comments, there is something very worthwhile that comes out in this meeting, which is the development of this baby and tot group. Because not out of nowhere, but suddenly Geraldine feels actually this is something that the village need to develop, which they haven't already, because little ones need to learn to read and write. Yeah. Which is very cool. I'm not sure if she's setting it up as a church thing or a community thing, as in like church run or community run. Have you guys got mums and dads and tots and babies, grannies, grandparents groups in your churches?
So yes, we do. And we've also got quite a few nurseries in my villages as well, which obviously what Geraldine's talking about is nursery schools rather than mum and tots groups.
Is she? Are you sure?
It's for the nurseries.
And the fact that she's talking about literacy. For those who don't know, a mum and tot group, or dad and tot, or grandparent and tot, or other carer and tot, is it's a little play group, really, where someone will bring a child, someone who has responsibility for the child and is allowed to.
Not just pick one up off the street.
Safeguarding compliantly.
Absolutely.
We'll bring a child, and there's usually toys, and it's a place for
singing. Often
for new parents to socialise with other new parents. Sometimes there'll be a bit of singing, and there'll be like some squash or milk and a biscuit. Whereas a nursery school has a bit more of a programme, is a little bit more, although there's still lots of play, is a little bit more learning centred, and that's more longer term childcare in terms of following a sort of school day. Parents will drop off their child when they go to work, and the child will spend the day in nursery school, with nap time and snack time and lunchtime and everything.
So it's the latter you're saying that she wants to set up?
I think she wants to set up a nursery school.
Wow.
And I think this is because we know that there is some sort of primary education which is held in a village hall. We've seen that, and we know that Alice supports that as a teaching assistant or something.
Brilliant.
So with little George, we've seen Jerry participate in that.
My dad wants to give me one, Liz.
Which seems to be village funded and village organised. So assuming that Geraldine is also like on the committee or board of governors or whatever it is for the school, I think they're saying we want to get the money so we can also add a nursery school element.
Intriguing. A little bit of backstory there. I like it.
There you go. And this is a big part of ministry, isn't it? That not always necessarily nurseries, although the Methodist Church up the road from where I live here has a nursery as part of it that was set up by members of the Methodist Church, but has become its own separate thing, although it's still connected to it. We often have these kind of mums and toddler groups, and because we often have big spaces where we can just say, roam free, small children, go wild. When I had my son, he was 3 months when the pandemic started, and we were all told to, stay home and all that kind of thing. So we just got to the stage of going to mums and tots groups and being kind of confident in going to those. And then suddenly it was wiped out. So as a first-time mum, I didn't have that support structure of other people that I knew around who knew what they were on about with various different things. And so suddenly was like completely thrown in on my own constantly with a 4-month-old who I adore very much, but I needed a break. And so they are these wonderful spaces for people to come, and sometimes there are Christian elements in them. I think that is a good thing to do if you're a church, whether that's you tell a little Bible story or whatever it might be, or do a service or sing some children's hymns or whatever it might be. But they are such a wonderful, valuable space. And my son goes to nursery but also goes to toddler groups at church, and they are lifesavers. I love them.
So great. Because ours came about because of, there was a wonderful, she's now a very good friend, but a parishioner who I actually didn't know, who messaged me out of the blue and said, what are you doing for mums who have had, or, dads, who have had recent births but are in the pandemic? Like, what's the church doing? We were like, nothing. And that's how it came to be. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, so, because I just can't imagine what a terrifying time that must have been. Like you said, just getting confident, going out into your groups with your little tiny human, and then it's like, whoosh, shut down from medical professionals, from family, from friends, like from every sort of community support. So I think I remember in the first few months of running our group, because support groups were allowed to go ahead, even with the strictest COVID restrictions when they were in place. A lot of our mums, and it was the mums who tended to come, would say this group was a lifesaver because we can literally just come, be ourselves, and just talk about the realities of the ups and downs of this really beautiful but really tough time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, snaps to Geraldine for wanting to contribute. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So this is a really great thing that Geraldine's doing, because it's played for a joke, but there are people who struggle with literacy in the village, quite clearly, which is played for a joke, but it's still an issue today, and there are plenty of people in different communities who struggle with reading and writing, and so Geraldine wants books, and we love books.
Well done, Jezza.
Yeah.
Well done, Jezza. So we go from this meeting over to the vicarage, and Kate, this is where you start to get mad at Alice.
Oh my goodness, I'm really annoyed at Alice. Maybe this is because I live alone, right? The idea of someone else answering my phone, and especially like when Geraldine has explicitly said to Alice, please don't do this. Like you can sort of understand maybe Alice is filling this sort of assistant role.
Yeah.
Maybe the church is actually, maybe she's also getting a bit of money to also be kind of pseudo-assistant to Geraldine. But when Geraldine has explicitly said, look, can you let me answer my own phone, please? And especially with the way that Alice answers, and assumedly some of the problems and the hot water that she's gotten Geraldine into, it just really annoys me. It's funny, but it really annoys me in a real life scenario.
Poor Alice. I love Alice, and we're going to come on to, I guess, towards the end of the episode. For me, Alice, in this episode, has never looked so Christ-like. I know that's a bit of a big statement. I'm going to unpack that later. But I know what you mean. It is a bit frustrating, but I can only see, like, the giggles in this scene. I do know a bit what you mean, but I think what's funny is that Geraldine seems to be going very het up about it, but then it's played that the next call she insists on answering herself actually is for Alice. And I wonder if it's a little bit of a nod to, like, actually Geraldine, Alice is a really crucial person in this ministry. And I don't know, she's been given an instruction and, doesn't necessarily follow it. But that bit did make me chuckle very much. Turns out to be a mum, wasn't it? Because Sister Wendy's on TV.
Yes. And Sister Wendy is someone I've heard about. I've never watched any of her programmes, but she was very famous in the 90s, especially when this was recorded. And she is a sister, so she's a nun, and she was an art historian and did all these programmes about art and history and all this kind of stuff and art criticism, and was generally known as a bit of a legend, celebrity nun of the time.
I am a big fan of that, and I guess thinking about celebrity nuns, is that good? Is it bad? Is it a possibility? Can you really be true to both callings? Kind of thing could be something we unpack. But I think that's so great that she has taken holy orders and yet she's out there kind of representing, she's not ashamed of who she is and is bringing God into the centre of everything. I love the idea. I'm going to definitely go away and do some Sister Wendy research. What I hated about this, though, is how Geraldine took the mick out of her for her appearance. She sort of did an impression which made her teeth be really prominent, and I was like, oh no, I don't like that. Boo!
That's what Geraldine does.
Not always.
Yeah.
Occasionally she does, like every human.
Let's recognise Geraldine's flaws. She makes fun of people, and she means to do it in a very loving way. But this is her sense of humour, and we just have to accept that.
I don't really have a sense of humour, so I do not like it. No, Geraldine.
Well, I don't condone her sense of humour.
No. Not this time. Alice thinks it's funny, so
it's not unusual for her.
No, I suppose maybe, but
celebrity sisters are a bit of a thing still in some ways, particularly on Twitter. I think there are certain sisters or nuns, or probably monks as well, but I know less of them, who are well known for their tweeting and that kind of thing. And
I follow a couple on Instagram as well.
Do you?
Yeah, and you can see what they're up to and like how they bring God into their centre, the centre of their lives. They go to the beach and eat ice creams together. It's really
so nice.
Dear listener, go and check out some nuns on your social media platforms if you want to.
I did have a calendar one year which was called Nuns Having Fun, and it was brilliant. It was photos of nuns like having snowball fights and that kind of thing. So it sounds dodgy, but
did you
wasn't.
Also have a hot priest's calendar? Was that you?
Yeah, the hot priest calendar.
I'm outing you now. I'm sorry,
but it is a thing that in Rome, the Catholic priests they have a calendar, and the most attractive priests get to be like Mr. January, except it would be Father January and Father February.
That seems counter like to the whole celibacy kind of thing that Roman Catholic priests have going on.
It's like, I mean, if we're going to be, because obviously we're talking today about Celebrity Vicar, we're going to jump into that in a bit, and we might want to think about, well, what would our boundaries be? Would you ever pose for a calendar where you would just be sexualised, I'm guessing? Or like, are you valued for your attractiveness? Because that's what gets you into this calendar.
Get in.
We get sexualised anyway.
Hashtag disagree. So you're like, might as well put it in a calendar.
Yeah, might as well get some money off it. No. So we talking like a calendar girls thing going on. Hey, maybe this is merch that we could do.
No one wants to see that.
I was going to say
I'm not saying calendar girl
like,
styles.
yes.
We could do the Vicar's Watch Dibley having fun.
But this isn't about calendars. The phone rings, Alice answers, Geraldine is flipping annoyed, as we can kind of understand. But who should be on the phone but the Times newspaper, inquiring if they can do a whole feature on Geraldine, which I'm not sure we knew was even a thing.
I didn't realise that was something the Times did. I guess they could do if they felt that Geraldine was doing particularly good work.
Yeah, it comes from the Dibley live episode, doesn't it? That they've heard her on the radio and think that she's an interesting person and therefore want to do a bit of a profile and a bit of a spread about her. It does surprise us, but she's asked to be in the Times and she is unsure and is then told that she'll be paid 500 quid for it, and she says yes, absolutely.
I've forgotten that. It's the money that gets her, isn't it? She's like, no, and then she was like, absolutely yes.
Which, just for a moment, and maybe this is a hint at what's coming later in the episode, you do think, that was a very quick throwing away of your principles there. And obviously, in the next scene, we learn what that particular £500 is going to go towards, but...
Yeah, can I make a confession here? When I learned that there was £500, I honestly thought, wonder what I would spend £500 on. And I was like daydreaming of all the things I'd do and all the holidays I'd put it towards, and I felt very ashamed when the next scene came on.
Oh, well, and in the next scene, we are back to the parish council and discussing the gala night that is being planned and ideas for content. And goodness me, do we have a lot of exciting content coming in. Jim has just watched the full Monty.
So good.
And has been inspired by that to offer a performance, which is one of the classic Vicar of Dibley moments that we will see later on. There's other discussions about what possibly might be happening in the gala, what talents might be coming forward with Frank and his impressions and various things. But we'll pause there for all the teasing because we'll get to the gala later. But my question for you is, would you do a talent show? Because it is a bit of a Christian thing, isn't it, that we do performances like this and get together and everyone does a little turn. And I've found, especially if you do like a weekend away with the church, that they'll have an evening where they do an evening entertainment and someone will play a song and or do a bit of script or whatever it might be. What would be your talent for the gala if you were going to do it in Dibley?
I might do. When I was a youth worker, I assisted with a charity that gave djembe lessons to djembe lessons to schools and youth groups. So I might do a little djembe lesson for some children. Hand drumming.
Very nice. Jenny, you would obviously sing.
Well, do you know what? To be fair, when I was a teenager, me and 3 friends would stand up and we'd be like, oh my gosh, we're going to be pop stars for the next 5 minutes. Let's make the most of this, guys. I do love a sing-song, I can't deny. But I am split in two ways. Part of me wants to do a Hugo and just put on my banana costume and come on stage and do like a funny dance or a routine. That would be a dream.
Yeah.
The second thing I think is, do you know what I absolutely love to do? Is recite poetry. I only know one poem, but I would think sometimes I write my own little funny poems about little things that happened, and they're supposed to sort of be funny. Some of them are funny because they're so bad, like my poem "Bus Stop Grandad." But I wrote a poem for my PCC the other day after we'd had a big old session, and I think but the poem I love the most is "Love" by George Herbert, because we had to look at it so much when we were training, and I think I could retell that with a lot of passion. Ruthie, what is your talent going to be? I cannot wait a single second longer.
Oh yeah. I'm trying to think. Maybe I would.
I know.
Tell it. What?
This is a true word. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Stand-up comedy.
Do you think so?
Yeah, with your leather jacket, your Converse, with your hair all down, your beautiful red lips. I think, and got any dog collar. I think I definitely see you as a stand-up comic.
Oh,
rocking it, by the way.
Thanks, mate.
Prophecy.
Our listeners at this point will be going, absolutely not. Oh yeah.
Hell yeah, sure.
But I did wonder about recounting a funny story or something like that, or reading a funny book or something. Maybe that's what I would do. But I do not have the vocal talents of these beautiful ladies, unless I was screaming some heavy metal. So, I'll do that instead. But that might not be the kind of family-friendly gala that they were hoping for. Not that this gala is particularly family-friendly when we get to it. But
so let's continue.
There we go.
So also in this meeting, so they bring up Geraldine's Times interview and they congratulate her on it. And then we get a little aside from Owen about how he likes the Times because it's soft, to use as loo
it's
roll.
not too rough on the buttocks.
It's not too rough on the buttocks. This is actually by strange coincidence. I was watching a video about this, and about how newspapers used to have such a long life after they were read. Like, people would buy them, you'd get your chips wrapped in it, and then you'd use it as toilet paper. It was an economizing thing, and also making good use of paper.
Wow.
He's who would know that Owen was a eco warrior?
Yeah,
Here we are.
love that.
Or it's an indication of his finances and his poverty.
So we hear about the Times and Frank is congratulating the vicar on it, and she says that she's got 500 quid for this and it's going to the nursery, which is lovely, and she is a better person than we are because we're all thinking,
£500.
how could we have a nice little holiday with that, or an IKEA spree? But no, the money goes straight to the nursery, and the setting all of that up, which is a really, really good thing.
I don't think I would keep her money, but for a really terrible reason. Not because I have a super generous nature, but because I just don't want to deal with the taxes.
Yes, I was going to come to that later on. So we head back over to the vicarage, and once again it's Alice and Geraldine fighting for the telephone, and the phone rings. Alice manages to get it, and it is a producer from Radio 2 who is asking if Geraldine would be up for going on Pause for Thought.
Pause for thought. Pause for thought. Pause for thought. Oh, sorry, yeah. You get it. That is in my head forever, that theme tune.
Geraldine chants it and is very excited, and she has a bit of a wrestle, doesn't she, about whether to do it or not. And Pause for Thought is literally what it says on the tin, isn't it? It's just a pause for a thought for the day, which is a different thing because that's on Radio 4, Thought for the Day. But Pause for Thought is light thought for the day, but they've got different words, and there probably is a significant difference between them, but we don't know it.
Because, confession, don't really listen to it. Don't really listen to the radio except when I put it on for the dog when I'm leaving the house.
Yeah.
I'm a Radio 1 girl.
Are you? I feel too old for Radio 1 now.
I'm classic FM because when I worked in a bookshop, that's what was on all the time. So, got addicted.
Carried it into life.
Yeah, Planet Rock over here.
That's cool.
So she's going to go on Pause for Thought with Tezza, who she sends lovely licky love to, who is the wonderful Sir Terry Wogan, who was famous for a very long time. He's died now, but he was on Eurovision as well as Radio 2 and was the voice of Eurovision for many, many years, and also did lots of stuff with children in need, and a very significant part of British culture and a much loved person, hence the nickname Tezza. And
there was the show where people would write in with comments to the BBC about shows that had been on that he also chaired. So Terry Wogan, essentially, people feel very close to him because the sort of things he was presenting. He also had a chat show called Wogan. The sort of things he were presenting were very interactive, very kind of close, not distant, if that makes sense. He was someone who people felt they knew. And so when he passed away, it was really a very sad moment for a lot of people.
Yeah, a bit of a national treasure.
Yeah, exactly. So we love Terry Wogan, apart from the introduction. Both of these two have just sighed because when it comes to the radio, Terry Wogan introduces Geraldine as a she-vicar.
Not just that, he says, today it's a she-vicar.
Ugh.
Which is even worse.
Tezza, honestly.
It's obvious time, I suppose, isn't it?
So Terry loses points, but we do still love him. And Geraldine does her pause for thought, and you see people in Dibley while at Horton Manor listening to it. And Hugo's dead excited and enjoys her jokes. But David sits on the sofa and says, slippery slope.
Which I do get, but she's still talking about the nursery at this point. It does feel community and Christ-centred. I put that out there.
It is, but I see this is a bit of a turning point for David Horton. I think by this point we're in series 2, just past the halfway mark, approaching the big moment at the end of series 2, where he has his lovely bonding moment with Jerry. I feel like here what we're seeing is a huge shift in David from what he's not doing is he's not going on a big rant and calling up a bishop, and like in previous season that's what he would have done. He would have kicked up a huge stink about our vicars doing this and it's not good. And whereas here, what he's doing is, I think he's showing that he knows Geraldine and he does respect her, but he's worried about her and what she's doing. I think there's growth here in one way or another.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I agree with you, Jenny, that at the moment she's still being quite sensible with this, but there is, I think we've seen already from Geraldine that she has got a bit of an ego on her at times, and there's a lot more danger now of her slipping into that, which is something that we do see later on.
And I wouldn't pick David Horton, but having outside voices of wisdom who know your tendencies of things that can be your stumbling blocks and can help watch with you for them is incredibly important.
Yes, definitely. I've definitely called people when I've been thinking about doing something or not doing something, and people who I know and trust, and saying, what do you think about this? And people who I know will be honest enough to say, Ruthie, that is a terrible idea. What on earth are you doing? But also people who would be my cheerleaders in that and say, yeah, great plan. Why don't yeah, go for it. So yeah, that's a really important thing to do, and David seems to be being that person.
And I wonder if him saying slippery slope is the beginning that sets in the viewer's mind, actually, maybe this is a slippery slope, because I feel like things do change here. Because I think the next thing we see is actually Geraldine and Alice going to, what would it be, like the radio to...
I think...
BBC Broadcasting House or something?
Yeah, they're coming out from doing Radio 2, aren't they? And bless her, Alice has gone as kind of an assistant,
so
it seems,
cute.
to this.
I love it so much.
And they bump in to the wonderful, the fabulous, the beautiful, elegant Darcy Bustle, who is a famous ballet dancer, who is just gloriously beautiful and looks wonderful in this. And Geraldine and Darcy have a little chat, and Darcy's a fan of what she's just said on the radio.
Yeah. In fact, she's pledged to her, if she ever needs anything or any help with raising the nursery off the ground, then to give her a call, which I think is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I hope that happens to me in ministry at some point.
What, that you bump into Darcy Bustle?
Yeah, or a celebrity, and they say, you know, Joan, whatever we can do to help raise your parish finances, or, you know, I'd be like, brilliant. Get them in.
And Geraldine makes a joke, doesn't she, about her wanting to be a ballet dancer, and there being a large number of people in clergy now who were former dancers. And we actually know one, don't we? We have a friend from college she was a professional dancer before she became a vicar, and she is another person like Darcy Bustle who's just stunningly elegant and beautiful and wonderful. And yeah, Katie, you're a babe.
The thing that I most remember from Vicar training is I think that's Friday mornings.
Mornings.
Was it Holy Movers? What was it? Or like
I can't remember
Good Bodies or Body...
Something like that.
I think like Holy Movers, I think, or something similar, where we would spend an hour just moving with joy to worship music. And she led us through that, and I loved it so much. I would do that.
And
again.
it sounds really cheesy and cliche, and we recognise that, but actually she taught me so much about using your body in worship and for prayer. And actually, you know, we think perhaps you've come from traditions where you've seen people doing interpretive dances in church, and it's just been really cringy and awkward, and people with flags and that kind of thing. But
I love a flag every now and then.
just watching her dance, she was just incredible, and just so in touch with her body and how she could use that to worship God. It was amazing to see.
So true.
So there are some dancers who are vicars, but Geraldine isn't perhaps one of them. Well, not with the same talent level of Darcy Bustle. And Geraldine gets another little taste of potential fame where someone comes and asks for her autograph, and she gets a bit excited about that, but it turns out she was after the autograph of Alison...
So cringy. Moyet, I think. Is it Moyet? Alison Moyet.
Who's a singer that we don't know either.
Yeah, we did look her up on Google Images. There are some correlations. You can have a look at
that. But there we go. So we're back to the parish council. And it seems the vicar has been very busy on various TV shows, and the parish council are congratulating her on the various things that she's been on.
Pause for thought, countdown, Noel's house party, which, to be honest, is the most disturbing because it means that Mr. Blobley exists in the Vicar of Dibley universe. Would you go on any of these TV shows?
I'd love to go on Countdown, but... 8 out of 10 Cats does Countdown.
Yeah, Cats does Countdown.
Because I'm not smart enough for a proper countdown, but I feel I could do the other one. And I do quite like Countdown. But the show that I think I would most like to be on would be Pointless, I think. I like Pointless.
My dad tried to convince me to go on the Repair Shop.
Oh, yeah, I love the Repair Shop.
I inherited a little home communion set from one of my granddads, which is really unique, and it was a little bit broken, and my dad said, oh, we'll both apply to take it on the Repair Shop, and it'll be a kind of 3-generation clergy thing.
Oh, that would be
great.
Yeah, I'm not one for going on TV, though.
Can I change my answer? Yeah. The show that I would like to go on the most is Bargain Hunt. I love Bargain Hunt. And I would want that fleece, and I would wear it every day and go for a golden gavel. But I got asked to be on a TV show recently. Someone slid into my DMs on
me
Instagram.
too.
Yeah, I've had that before.
Did you have the same one?
I bet we did.
I didn't have a recent
It was a very
one.
obscure reference about some comedy show that some panel show that a comedian was doing.
Yeah, so I
ignored
researched it further and said, what is it about? And he said, get back in touch if you fancy going on it. So I wonder if he's just tapped up a load of Vicars.
I reckon so. I've had 2 or 3 in probably the last 2 years, so quite a long time.
Really?
But I think there are people on Instagram who just sort of scout out people who are doing things to have a really broad net.
Yeah.
Because I think when he was like, "Oh, look up, it's called this name," and I looked it up and I was like, "There's no way I can be an authentic vicar and do this TV show," because you had to fake who you were in order to get people to do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, "This is the most." I couldn't think of anything worse with paralleling who I am and who I would have to be. I was like, "Oh no."
I've got to say, if I had to go on a game show or reality show, it would probably be something like The Circle, but I would go on as myself.
I think that's
partly because I'm a
said.
massive introvert, and I would probably just quite like being
You'd
alone
love
all
it,
day. But not doing the catfishing element and pretending to be someone else.
That was the thing that he said about.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, Jenny.
So we're polar opposites, baby.
But you don't have to do lying about yourself.
That's good. I didn't look into it too much, to be fair. I was just first look, I was like, no. Isolated in an apartment, texting people, being like, "Yeah, I'm a guy. My name's Barry, and I'm 41."
Weren't you
From
invited to apply for a big TV talent show?
So yeah, I had, when we were talking about this earlier, when I was thinking about it, I was like, "Oh, I've never really done any TV, blah blah blah." But in my last year of Vicar training school, so this is going back, to be fair, to 2016, I hadn't even been ordained yet. Somebody recommended that I apply for Britain's Got Talent because they wanted a singing vicar. Yeah, and I got through one of the first rounds. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, could this be a thing?" But I didn't get through any more rounds. But I remember telling our college principal at the time, who was like, "That's so cool." And I was like, "I could be a singing vicar." And I guess it's because it's break the stereotype. But then another singing vicar got it, and he was really good.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, good memory. I literally only thought about it. It only broke my thought a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah. So go back to Geraldine. She seems to be saying yes to anything that is coming along, and it turns out she's got quite an exciting photo shoot coming up, and is doing stuff with Vogue, and we have a montage of the photos taken from it, which
firstly shows that she's spiraled, and I wonder if there's some not risque photos, but suggestive photos.
I would say risque, yeah.
Which I wonder, is it cause for a clergy discipline measure? I mean, I don't think she definitely is not attending to the code of conduct for the clergy that we're supposed to follow.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think the initial photos are fantastic, and there are some serious 90s, full-on brown lip liner with a lighter shade, which, wow, that is a powerful look. And I think there is something really great about putting yourself out there and going, do you know what? Yeah, here I am. And doing kind of things that people think you would say no to. But Geraldine takes it too far, it seems.
Yeah,
and
there's
her
definitely a line.
ego goes mad.
There's definitely a line between, I think for me, I wouldn't want to do anything that distracts too much from what I actually feel called to do, which is be in my parish and know my people and spend time with them.
Yeah.
And it obviously becomes about Geraldine, and I think one of the things we both noticed, Ruthie, is how she stops wearing her clerical collar.
Yeah. So when at the end of the montage, we go back to the vicarage, and Geraldine is in a fantastic, silver leopard print suit, which, yes, amazing. But she is no longer wearing her collar, which for some people they don't wear their collar much, but Geraldine wears it all the time, and suddenly the collar has gone. And I think she seems to have changed.
Like you say, the photos start out okay, and this kind of sums up what happens in this episode, really. Everything starts out lovely, innocent, interesting, but it's when the velvet cross and the unbuttoned shirt come out, and there's sort of over-sexualised, like, lips, and I'm like, oh no! And you suddenly think, actually, this has gone too far.
Well, even before that, there's a photo of her with tousled hair, like what one might call sex hair, where she's looking at the camera.
One might call sex hair.
One might call sex hair.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, there's a photo which is included where it isn't overtly sexual, but she has tousled hair and she's looking at the camera suggestive. And she's leant forward. Suggestive.
Yeah. And Geraldine is a wonderfully flawed character, and I think one of the big things that she seems to lack in lots of different ways is confidence, but she's very confident as well at the same time. So I think she is someone who needs that boost and needs to be told that she's loved and she's beautiful, and I think that's kind of a bit of a secret thing for her, that she's just a bit insecure about stuff, and so being told she's fabulous and getting into Vogue and having all these different people come along is a big thing for her.
Is it everything that David Horton was worried about female clergy from that very first episode?
Interesting.
Yeah. That is a good point.
And, what's happening with the money? Initially, at the start of the episode, there was something very worthy about Geraldine doing the Times article and the money going towards the nursery project. But now, what's happening to the money?
So here is a bit of boring clergy stuff for you. So we get paid something called a stipend, which isn't pay in the same way that you would get a paycheck or something like that, because it's not for a certain number of hours or anything like that. It's our houses are part of our payment and all this kind of thing. And I'm going to get this wrong, but basically that's how we get paid, but we're not paid. It's complicated, but
so that we have enough money to live and survive and support our families while conducting our ministry.
Yeah, so they say. And as part of that, any extra income has complicated tax things with it. So if someone's working part-time and has another job on the side but is getting a stipend, it becomes more complicated. And so for those who are so for Geraldine now, the question is she doing all of this stuff for free? In which case there isn't an issue with it.
Where did the silver leopard print suit come from?
Yeah, or has she decided to buy that now, or was it a gift? Which again, it becomes a complicated tax thing. If she's donating all the money, so that's something for us all to think about. But the interesting thing about all this is talking about these kind of, she's become this celebrity vicar, is that we have celebrity vicars, don't we? And actually for some people it's much more of a calling to do that kind of stuff, and there are people who don't have the same ego issues that Geraldine clearly has. And I mean, there are people like Giles Fraser and Kate Botley and Richard Coles, who are all these reverends who do this kind of media stuff. I mean, Richard Coles started out in a band, so who are clearly called to do it because they're good at it, but do not seem to have the ego that Geraldine has and struggles with.
Yeah.
Or maybe they do, but keep it in check better. Because I guess we all have an ego, don't we, that we need to wrestle with. But I think that's the problem here is, it's so sad because you see, it's almost like a kind of a lust or a greed for more and more and more, and how excited she gets when someone asks for an autograph, or when more and more invitations come in, and it's like, she's almost becoming overwhelmed with all these opportunities. And it's not with Christ at the centre. It's not about the nursery anymore. It's not about community anymore. It's more about just her and how wonderful and fabulous she is. And like you say, Ruthie, all of us need to be told, we're doing a good job and we're wonderful and fabulous. But also, it's like you can't build your whole life on that as well. I think this, I guess, is the slippery slope which David foresaw.
Yeah, I wonder if as well, nowadays, most dioceses have communications officers, so someone who gives you advice if you suddenly find yourself in the media, or if you've been invited to do something, and they'll give you training and support and guidance. And I wonder if that sort of person didn't really exist back at that time. Yeah. And so Geraldine is very much making up as she goes along. She's not got anyone who's advising her or helping her through it.
Yeah, to check out with her. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the big dangers, I think, is when she describes the title of this next magazine spread, that it's all about St. Geraldine.
Oh, yeah, St. Geraldine of Dibley. Yeah, I've forgotten about that.
And so this is introduced, and the papers come along and do their interviews, and when the papers come in, we see the damage that has been done by these various different interviews, and there's a bit of a crisis committee of the parish council to discuss what's been said,
and not damage against Geraldine herself, because I was anticipating that it would be suddenly she's exposed to not be a saint, and actually this was a paper which was deliberately seeking to undermine Geraldine herself, but actually it's even worse. It's exposing her parishioners.
Because I think what happened here is they came in for one story to give us great anecdotes about Geraldine, your vicar, your she-vicar, but they found an even better story when they came into the village and met the parishioners. But it wasn't a good story for them. Bless them. What can we recount? What were some of the headlines? Can you remember?
Is this the most boring man in Britain?
For Frank.
Britain's B.O. King.
For Owen.
No brain.
For Jim.
Rich as Croesus.
Thick as poo.
Thick as poo.
For Hugo. Oh, that was it, I think, wasn't it? So really sad titles, and bless them, it's so sad at the parish council meeting because you see everybody that sat there, they all unfold the paper to reveal their title with a massive picture of their face next to it, as if they've been, held up and shamed. It is really sad. Obviously it's hilarious at the same time, but in reality it would be a terrible and a really sad event.
And I wonder if the angle, I don't think the paper that's done this has particular journalistic standards, but assuming the best, even then it's not a high bar. Maybe that what they were doing, we see these headlines, but maybe it's a longer piece about Dibley itself. Perhaps Geraldine has sort of made her fame talking about improving the literacy of the village, and this is kind of exposing, on one hand, why that's needed, but also maybe saying, she's talked up this village and look how terrible the people are.
Aww. We don't know. We never find out, do we?
We never know.
And I have a small defence for Geraldine in that we can't be held responsible for the people that we minister to all the time. And actually, they are interesting characters who are boring and have no brain and smell and this kind of thing. So she shouldn't have exposed them like this, but also she is not responsible for them in this same way. And that's one thing I would like to say in her defence.
I also agree. So I know we're going to come on to this in a minute with what David says and why, he is showing that he was right all along and this has been terrible. But just I would like to also propose a little defence ahead of this time. I don't think it is Geraldine's fault, because she didn't do the reporting or send in the photos. I would blame the reporter, not Geraldine. And I have to say, I'm really surprised that she doesn't defend herself. And maybe that's because she knows that actually what's happened is her fault. But I feel bad for her because David lays it on so heavy. Is it okay to go into this now? Should we dive in?
Let me dive in as well. So David goes into this heavy, and let's be honest, David's being a bit hypocritical because he called the papers on Geraldine for the animal...
True.
For the animal service.
True.
So let's get that out on the table. I don't think that what David is, when he is chastising Geraldine, so this is what he says. He says, "You put yourself above your own community. You've forgotten why you came here, and frankly, we feel used and betrayed." I don't think he is necessarily only talking about this newspaper, because you're right, Geraldine did not necessarily direct the newspaper or the journalist. It was a journalist's decision to write this article and frame it the way it was. They had told Geraldine this was going to be a piece about her as Saint Geraldine, which was a poor decision to go ahead with to begin with, but it's not her fault. What is her failing is that she became so disconnected and distracted from her parish that they felt potentially abandoned, and that she was setting her sights elsewhere. And we've seen that, where she's not interacting with them when she's in her fancy suit the way she would normally. She's not showing kindness and compassion. So for me, I think David is fully justified in what he says. Not because she's at fault for the papers, although her pursuit of her own ego led to this. But because she has been so caught up in her own celebrity. Yeah,
I get that. Why do you think that David says we feel used? I can't quite get my head around that part.
Because she's used them to become famous. She has talked... The reason she has become a media celebrity is because she's been talking about the need for literacy and improved literacy in a nursery in their village, and she has used this has been her to talk about from starting with a very good cause, but what started out as promoting a cause and raising money has become about her, and I would feel used in that situation.
And I wonder, we don't hear it, but I wonder if she's used anecdotes from the village and talking about what they've done in the kind of media stuff that she has already done.
Yeah, I was thinking if it was they felt used in terms of the newspaper again, I was like, it doesn't quite fit. And that would be, like, I was put myself in Geraldine's shoes and I thought how painful that would be to hear. And I think David is really, what I have to say I do quite like though, he's really... gets to the point, he lays it on thick, and then he says, right, well, let's move on, it's a sad day. And obviously you feel the weight of crushedness that Geraldine must feel, but then he's like, okay, well, let's get on with business. So the meeting carries on, doesn't it? But
and what he doesn't do is what he would have done in the previous season, which is, and this is why we shouldn't have ever had a female vicar.
Yeah, true, actually.
This is why you should be running the cake stall, or whatever.
Yeah, those sort
Dear
of
lady.
gender slams.
Misogyny.
Yeah, you're right.
He just says, it's a sad day, we're moving on. And then we get Geraldine's dark night of the soul. We see her really wrestling with her guilt. And actually, I think it's more powerful that actually David is speaking rightfully here, that Geraldine really is feeling her failings. It's not false guilt, because we all feel that when someone says something and it's not 100% right, but we get caught up in that narrative and it becomes a pity party, whereas actually this is something where I think Geraldine has been confronted by the Holy Spirit saying, you know that this is a failing in you, you've known this all along. I imagine that this has come up before, and I think she's saying, oh, what have I done? I've let this get away from me again.
One of the terms that is used to describe the Holy Spirit is the Comforter. So the Holy Spirit appears and comforts when things are difficult. And in this scene, the Comforter appears not just in the form of the Holy Spirit, but in the form of Alice Alice Springs Tinker, who appears and I think offers some comfort and sees that Geraldine's in a mess. She says some awkward things as well, but has come up with 3 different plans of how we could fix things. The middle plan is not a great plan.
The first one's totally impossible.
Well, yeah, the first one, she recounts the plot of Superman.
Yeah. First one's impossible. The second one is terrible advice, and you wouldn't have it on TV now.
And the third one, though.
The third one is an interesting plan, but with the first plan, she suggests about going back in time and changing things, which is how Superman deals with the death of Lois Lane. And are there any moments in your ministry where you think, I just wish I could go back and change that thing? I mean, obviously, we won't be able to say specifics with all of this.
Yes. I can't share the moment, but there will be forever in time and locked in my memory a moment where I said something and I suddenly realised actually that was a really wrong thing to say. And it wasn't harsh, it wasn't rude, it wasn't derogatory, it wasn't anything like that. I asked somebody a question and I can't think of a right way to word this, but basically, yes, there is, those moments in time where you suddenly say something and then everything just goes, and then they reply and then it just goes, and it's like a ground wanting to swallow you up moment. I definitely had one of those, and I wish with all my heart that I could reverse it. I just made a mistake, but it was a really bad one. Then I basically just spent the next maybe 10 minutes going to the person, I am so sorry, like I'm heartbroken, I've made this error. It was awful. But I guess they teach us things, you see, these horrible moments, they're teachers.
And I think I'd say I've worked so hard for my mental health, for psychological well-being, to adopt a mentality that says when things go wrong, God is in the learning, and God is working with me and changing me, and God willing, things will be resolved. And I don't think I would go back and change mistakes I've made, because I wouldn't be the person I'm here now, and I would probably end up making that mistake at another point.
Yeah. I think all of this leads in quite well to a comment that we've made previously about the importance of apologies.
Oh, yeah.
And when you've messed up, knowing when's the time that you need to hold your hands up and say, I've messed up, I'm really sorry. And making amends in certain ways. Because, like these two, there are times that I just think, I wish I had not said that or done that or whatever. And would I change it? Maybe sometimes, yes, but I think most of the time, they have been learning places.
Definitely. And I think I just add in as well, one of the statements I made towards the beginning of this podcast was that I've never seen Alice appear so Christ-like in an episode as she does here. So she comes in with comfort, Holy Spirit vibes, but also, to me, with Christ-like vibes when everybody else has left, when everyone else is heartbroken, everyone else has gone. We think Geraldine has maybe been in the church hall or the parish council rooms, wherever they've been meeting, perhaps all the way through the night. Alice comes back in, she sits with her, she gives her a little hug. Geraldine spills out her truth to her, and she doesn't condemn her. She doesn't say, oh, you stupid, like, how could you do this to us? Which would be so tempting, or to my beloved husband to be, do you know what I mean? She doesn't do any of that. She listens and she receives it, and she doesn't shy away from the fact that she has done something wrong. So she brainstorms these 3 ideas because she says, we want to make everybody like you again. She's really aware that there has been a failing and a problem. And I love that she just comes to her and, I don't know, almost as a mother would to a child, or Christ to his beloved disciple. But I don't know, what do you guys think?
Yeah, so Pitch, actually, Alice, from the very start of the episode, has been Jesus's conduit. From the bits I hate where she is answering the phones and she is making it hard for Geraldine to accept this opportunity, and in fact, advising her against it in her own way, by saying, you said you don't want to do this, etc., to being the person who when Geraldine is in the depths of her ego, Alice is the one there, kind of being a voice which is just agitating things a little bit, to then being the one who brings the newspapers and the bad news and confronts Geraldine with her failings. But as you said, is then also the comforter, is not condemning her, and is her companion through her dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
So everything's... sorry, Ruthie.
Having said all this and all the lovely things that we've said about Alice, I have just had a flash forward to an episode later on where she's read the Da Vinci Code, and
she doesn't always get it right.
Yeah.
She doesn't always get it right.
But that's the thing is, actually, and this is what we believe as Christians, is that Jesus uses us. God uses us in all our humanity.
In a good way.
In all our brokenness. In a good way. And it's not constant. There isn't one perfect person who is always acting as Jesus does. It kind of ebbs and flows. But the right circumstances and the right moment, Jesus uses us to get the point across, to do something good, to change the world, and to be him.
There's that beautiful prayer of Teresa of Avila that says, Christ has no hands and feet in the world but yours today. I love that so much. I refer back to it all the time.
Aww.
Remind my parishioners about it as well. It's like, go guys, this is what we're here to do. Get filled up with the Holy Spirit and sent out into the world.
Yes,
anyway,
Jenny.
I shouldn't get hyped now because we're in a sad point in the series, in this episode. What are we going to do next? Geraldine's been weeping at the table. Alice is there, but everything's looking bleak. Come on, Ruthie, what happens next? Give us some good news, baby.
But Alice has a plan, and it involves... Alice's final plan involves the gala, and so we go forward to the night of the gala, and goodness me, what a sight we are presented with. We have Jim mid-flow through his full Monty routine. And
he does go the full Monty.
He does do the full Monty. He does the classic hat switch as he pulls off his pants and his hat covers his privates, and then
he's been practicing.
He has. He's worked hard at that
Everything
routine.
leans back. Like
the camera comes back to the back of him, and we see his buttocks in full splendour as he tosses the hat into the crowd, and they all look appalled.
No.
Does anyone look slightly aroused?
Yeah, no one looks aroused. But Alice is almost like, as if like,
yeah.
She's almost like, oh my gosh, that's what a man looks like.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what David does. A classic, covers his mouth in horror. But Alice is sort of like oh my goodness, right, okay.
Goodness me.
So quite an important night, maybe, but it's such a great scene.
Anyway,
we've had the fabulous striptease from Jim, which should be the finale, quite frankly. But instead, we have the farting duck,
which feels very, for those of, I don't know how many of you have watched Parks and Rec, but there's like that town in that show, they're obsessed with this little pony called Little Sebastian. He's just a small pony, and it just, I get this feeling like that farting duck should be Dibley's kind of, like, everyone loves a farting duck.
Yeah, Dibley's celebrity. Yeah. Mascot of Dibley is the farting duck, and the pleased face that Owen has when he does it. It's amazing. And then Frank comes on to do his impressions, which are of his family members, so no one quite knows it. But I would like to talk about Frank's outfit and just the confidence that he's grown in since he's come out to the village, and his fabulous purple bow tie. And I think he's got an earring in. I wasn't quite sure. It looked like there was a glint of an earring in one ear, but he's gone for it and is so confident. And his impressions fall a bit flat, but it's Frank. It's what else would he do? It's wonderful.
I actually think it's genius to be like, this is my second cousin Wilfred before he had his whatever it was, his tonsils out, and then this is him after he had his tonsils out. Like, but there's a certain comedic gold where, played by the the right comedian, and unfortunately Frank isn't a right comedian, but played by the right comedian, you could have people rolling in laughter.
Yeah, there's the sketch that Peter Kay does about family at weddings that I absolutely adore and find wonderful, partly because I'm from that neck of the woods and therefore recognise a lot of the stuff that he talks about. But it's more generic that these are the kind of aunties that you have, and then there's your cousin, and then there's your nephew sliding on his knees and all this kind of thing. So if Frank had done something a bit like that, maybe the whole room would be crying with laughter. But no. And Frank then introduces the finale, which is the wonderful, the glorious Darcy Bustle, who has appeared on stage for the gala at Dibley.
And so, I don't know about you, but this for me is a very classic Dawn French highlight clip that we get. And in my head, as I remembered this scene, I never associated it with an episode of The Vicar of Dibley. For me, it was either a comic relief thing, or some other one-off as part of a French and Saunders sketch show. And it was Dawn French, not Geraldine Granger. But for me, it was, this scene exists in isolation to the episode.
To everything else. And it is an amazing scene. If you've not watched it for a long time, Darcy Bustle is doing her wonderful dance on the scene, and there's a mirror on stage behind her, and the mirror image of Darcy Bustle is Geraldine in the same outfit and joining in with the steps as best she can until it gets to a point where she's like, this is too complicated. She steps out the mirror and makes Darcy Bustle do the same dance moves that she does, including a bit of a squat and a head twist flick thing that is just glorious to watch. A very elegant ballet dancer tries to engage with that as well. And from all this dancing, this scene, as it finishes, Darcy's presented with flowers and Geraldine looks at her parish council and they all kind of give her the nod of, good job, well done. You've somewhat redeemed yourself. And Geraldine gives Alice the thumbs up for her idea, and Alice is like, yeah, go for it. But I think we all slightly disagree about whether she has redeemed herself sufficiently in this moment.
I think even in the episode, and we'll get to real life in a moment, it feels like a large issue is just being swept under the rug. Yeah, so getting Darcy Bustle obviously sold tickets, but what has Geraldine actually displayed that she's learned? She is on stage making this performance in many ways about her and not Darcy Bustle. It's not like she's humiliating herself or humbling herself.
Oh, I think I don't know.
Do you not think so?
I think she is big time. Because she's making herself a spectacle, isn't she? Because everyone's...
But in such a Geraldine way that, again, it's... For me, there's still something about the spotlight is on her.
I don't agree again. But I sort of see what you mean. But I think Geraldine can be no other person but Geraldine. And she's using a connection to sell the tickets to have something like Darcy Bustle in Dibley. That's a big deal. Yeah. And then I think she does humble herself and she makes herself the ridiculous. And I think that is her way of being like, yeah. And I don't know, it's a bit of an ego come down in one sense, but I don't know. I think
not what
that
you would do.
What, sorry?
Not what you would do in real life. Like, that wouldn't solve anything or resolve anything in real life. If you made such a big mess as Geraldine has made, one performance like that.
I wonder if it's a changing in attitude though, and if we're reading deeper into this, she's comparing herself to Darcy Bustle, who is a famous ballet dancer, who is graceful and elegant and beautiful, and can do the media stuff because she's used to it. And in contrast to this, Geraldine kind of flops along on stage and struggles to keep up. And I wonder if this is like her final performance. So this is her final way of doing things. And so she, does the bow at the end, and Darcy gets the flowers and Geraldine gets a single flower from Owen. And this is her, final performance of all the stuff that she's done recently, and a change in attitude. And she mouths the word sorry to the people in the congregation. And it's the start of her redemption from the way that she's messed up, but it's going to require more things, which is something that we wanted to talk about in real life, that actually perhaps when you've messed up, perhaps it's appropriate to do a grand gesture in some ways that Geraldine does here, and whether that's a public apology or something like that. But actually it's then the change in attitude that comes from it that people will recognise and look at.
Yeah, there's various things you can do, and really your response in terms of making amends or repenting is always, it's different depending on the situation. Sometimes you can over apologise and just make a situation worse. You can overtake responsibility. You can take too much responsibility in a desire to throw yourself on the floor and say, oh no, so everything's gone wrong, actually. And in doing so, you make it into a bigger deal than it was. But you can also brush things off when actually you need to take responsibility for it. Every situation's different.
And thinking outside the box, it might have been, because we've talked about the necessity of apology and the importance of apology. It might have been that Geraldine has gone round to each of the parishioners that were affected and said, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Because she's not directly responsible, but there's a part of hers to play. So maybe part of her ministerial kind of pastoral care will be to do that. And then this is something extra. And again, I know that's making it up a little bit behind the scenes. But I think it's a fun way to resolve what's happened.
It is. I think for me, a better narrative resolution would have been to either, as her final media appearance, or asking Darcy Bustle to highlight the good qualities of those people and tell some positive stories as an amends, so that they will not go down as, in the media, be remembered as Britain's B.O. King, or the most boring man in Britain.
Instead, it would be the man with the farting duck.
Yeah.
And Jim who does a striptease.
Or I don't know, I would want some sort of transformation and maybe repairing of their reputations or something, even if it's just a local thing, just a celebration of these people who have been hurt.
They might feel like they've had enough media coverage already. Just in case it went wrong again. It's hard to say, isn't it? But anyway, I guess what happens is David does give his nod of approval. Geraldine says sorry, and we get the vibe, I think, that all is resolved. Whether we agreed it would be, obviously it probably wouldn't be maybe the way in real life. But actually for this episode, it does seem to heal things, which is good. And peace is restored to Dibley.
Peace and humanity. I have a little fun fact, it would seem. Once again, the book has extra script for the ending of this scene, which I watched it on iPlayer. I don't know if you guys did as well. And it just kind of, Geraldine finishes by saying, who'd want fame and fortune when you can sit with a friend and watch the stars. And in the book, and it is ringing bells now, there's an extra bit to that scene where Alice talks about wishing on stars, and it's been teased throughout the whole episode what Hugo's going to do as a performance, and we have a flashback to what Hugo did for his performance. Would you like to hear?
Yeah. I don't remember this at all.
So, Hugo is introduced onto stage, and Hugo, his performance in the end is... he says that he's going to get married in a week's time, and he's looking forward to that, and has the words from the Everly Brothers as a poem to Alice. And he says, I bless the day I found you. I want my arms around you. Now and forever, let it be me. So never leave me lonely. Say that you love me only, and that you'll always let it be me.
Oh, I love that. I do remember it now.
Yeah.
What a beautiful... So me and Hugo are the same. Get up and do a little poem.
Do a little poem. Do a little turn. So there we
I love
go.
that.
Yeah.
Well done, Hugo.
I think it's clear from this episode that Geraldine realises that her heart is with Dibley, and she loves the people there. And yes, fame and fortune has been exciting and she's enjoyed kind of going for that. But actually her heart is in Dibley, and Hugo's words of love and let it be me and all this kind of thing have rung true for Geraldine, and knowing that her place is here in this community.
Yeah, absolutely.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Vicar's Watch Dibley. Thank you to Toby for editing our ramblings.
Any views expressed in this podcast are our own and don't necessarily represent those of the Church of England or any other organisations with which we are affiliated.
And as always, bless you for listening.
I've got a mute budgie for sale. It's not going cheap.
I like that one. That was a good one.